Hello, this is Kenneth. We are going to be looking at block diagramming today, also called structuring. And it's a very important and helpful way for structuring a text. Here's a quote for you. Phrasing, which is also called block diagramming, is an intuitive, flexible, easy to use study tool that clearly communicates the main idea of a biblical passage and also visualizes the flow of thought. That's by Dr. Brian Tapp at Bethlehem College and Seminary. Here's an example that I want us to start with and just look at how I use block diagramming or phrasing or propositional outlining to be able to look at this text. The text I want us to look at is if Ezra 7:10, for Ezra set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to do it and to teach his statutes and rules in Israel. Okay, to be able to structure this passage, here's what I've done. I have essentially broken it down. This for here, I've put it on its own on a line and indented it. Okay, and and then this is the main idea, and so it shows. I've put it to the left. Then I have it here. The next thing. So for Ezra set his heart to study the law. What law? The law of the Lord. So of the Lord describes the law and to do it and to teach. Teach what? To teach his statutes and his rules. To teach where? In Israel. This is a basic look at how one structures the text. Now, I'm going to go on and give you some instructions and tips on how to actually structure a text. I have illustrated here what I have done with a small passage, but ideally, you structure a text at the level of a paragraph and see how the paragraph, which is a unit of thought, is played out. In fact, you can structure an entire book of the Bible using block diagramming. I have done that for the book of Ephesians recently with my wife and kids, sort of sitting together and just studying the Bible and seeing what each phrase is doing. It's a powerful, powerful way of really understanding what is being said because understanding the scriptures includes understanding the structure. Very, and then obviously understanding the context and the content, but the structure is so central to understanding what the scriptures are saying. Here's what I said here. Notice that I have indented some portions of the text to reveal the main idea of the verse and show how other parts relate to it and support it. That's what I was explaining. Also, notice that I have included descriptions of the function of each text within square brackets, and we're going to look at that a little bit more as we do examples. In the rest of this discussion, I would note. I actually what I'm going over here for this discussion is a summary of a small portion of this from my book, Inductive Bible Study, to introduce this discussion. So a block diagram is different from a line diagram, which you may have been taught in grammar school, like in middle school or high school, or primary or secondary or high school in countries that have secondary schools. Uh, Structuring works well for all genres. We can do structuring on any biblical passage, but it works better when there are logical connectives in the text, as you see in many New Testament letters and other expository genres. Okay. Block diagrams are best done on whole paragraphs, like I was saying. You're going to do that. You're going to first confirm the boundaries of the paragraph under investigation, and second, you're going to analyze the sentences of the paragraphs to see how their propositions, assertions advance the author's thought. Okay, here are some instructions that I expect you to be able to use to do a block diagram. Again, these are from the textbook, but I want to go over it quickly to give you a better understanding. So you take a paragraph, for example, that you want to study, and first thing you should do is identify the boundaries of the text. Okay, and I recommend using the New American Standard or ESV or any formal equivalence or word for word translation, because that mimics more the original language. And if you are fluent in the and can read the original languages well, you should definitely use it, because that it would be best. But if you are not going to lose anything if you use a version like the New American Standard or ESV that is based on the structure of the original. So I recommend copying the text into a word editor like Microsoft Word, okay, and then changing the layout. Like to change the layout here, I'm going to do it real quickly. Hopefully, this is getting captured. I'm going to go to layout in this document and then go under orientation and choose, instead of portrait, I'm going to choose landscape. Okay, that opens the page a little bit bigger and allows me to be able to get the job done easier. Okay, now it did move some things around for me here as I was doing this. When you when you change the when you change the orientation of the text, it moves some highlighting around, but I think we're still good here. Then the second line we were at is to, so we already talked about this one, to change that to landscape. And the next is to mark or highlight all the structure indicators. We already talked about structural relationships and connectives in the course. Um, Mark that and mark connectives in the text, and you're going to use that to divide the text into clauses and phrases. Asking the 5Ws and 1H questions often reveal what the subordinate clauses are doing in the text. Okay, because this answers certain questions. Now, you're going to divide the passage using the structure indicators into clauses, subordinate clauses, and phrases, like I've mentioned earlier. And you're going to distinguish between major structures and minor structures based on how much of the text they control. Then you will put, and you can slow this video down and read what I'm doing here, but I think I'm going at a good pace for you. Put the main clause or the main idea or the theme of proposition on the left margin, and then you're going to indent everything, indent the subordinate clauses or phrases that modify or qualify the main clauses. And you're gonna, if you're gonna indent one step further any unit that modifies or qualifies the subordinate units that modify the main clauses. Okay, and let's go through this quickly. Then you will indent parallel. When you do the indentation, parallel clauses or phrases are going to be on the same line vertically. They're gonna let me see here if you can show. So they're going to end up starting from the same place if they're parallel, going like that. So let's see here. Then determine the following for each subordinate phrase or clause. What type of clause or phrase it is, what word or phrase it modifies, how it modifies or qualifies it, and how it affects the meaning of the sentence. Then you should put labels. And remember, this is really important when you're structuring. Never change the order of the text. So I've broken down the instructions here, and I've really given you a lot of text. But the key to this is that you're going to essentially just go through the text, as I'm going to show you down with a few examples, and you're going to identify the structural connectives, the structural indicators, where the text naturally breaks based, and it does so based on connectives that are indicators of structure. And then you're going to break the text up and then indent it and show what supports what. It's really that easy. Okay, now let's see some examples here for how to actually do this. Now I'm looking at the Ezra 7. I'm gonna go here. Could do that. For Ezra had set his heart. Okay, Ezra had set his heart to do what? To study the law of to study the law of the Lord. This is he set his heart to study the law of the Lord. Okay, and I'm going to. I think I don't like the spacing that I'm having there, so I'm going to try to change the spacing between the lines. Oh, did I make it worse? I did make it worse. Hold on just 1 second here. Oh, because I put auto. Good. That's what I intended. Okay. So, I didn't select that. Okay. Of the Lord. So, I'm going to indent this inside here because it's subordinate. For this for stands for because. Okay. Because that means you need to see what has been said earlier that that is now being followed by because or for. Ezra, there's something important that was said earlier that you need to connect and make sense of this entire argument. Okay. Okay, so we see here for Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord, and you see that here Ezra has set his heart to study the law of the Lord, to study the law. This of the Lord describes the law, and to do it. That is a parallel, so we're gonna keep to do it, and to teach it. We're gonna to teach. Okay, what is being taught here? The statutes of the Lord, to teach what? Teach his statutes, okay? And teach his and rules. And where? In Israel. Okay, I am something to note here. I am going a little bit granular in this example because the sentence is small and I want to see everything. If I was working with a paragraph, I will not go this detail. Okay, so we now see this for here. Okay, because, which is reason or ground. So I'm not going to put it. I showed you an example up here because it will take me so much time here. This you can go back and see where we discussed that here. For here is because, and this is reason or ground. Ezra had set his mind. This is the main statement, the main clause. Okay, Ezra had set his heart to do what? The purpose. This is a purpose. Ezra said to study the law of the Lord, to do it, and to teach it. So the purpose is in the form of a series: 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and that's good. So I'm gonna use a pen here. Okay, so this is the purpose here and here and here, and we said this describes the law of the Lord here. To teach, this describes the content of the teaching, the statutes and rules, and where it was going to happen. This is very important. You could preach a whole sermon on this passage alone, and you'll be and these parts that we're talking about here will be part of your outline. Okay, now let's look at another example real quickly. Okay. For God so loved the world. For God so loved the world. And this for here also is a because. Because God so loved the world. Okay. And you can, to understand this passage in context, obviously, you're going to see what Jesus was saying to Nicodemus prior. Like, this is part of Jesus' conversation with Nicodemus. For God so loved the world that. Okay, again, I should have Should have removed this for all of them at once. I'm supposed to do them one by one. But hopefully you can learn a thing or two about what I'm going through now. My forgetfulness in doing this might help end up being to your advantage in that you see how to do this if you're not aware of, if you didn't know yet. John, so we're doing John 3. For God so loved the world, you could put the for separate and indent it inwards too, for because and you're gonna say that's his Jesus is stating a reason. For God so loved the world that he gave. And notice here this for expresses manner. Okay. For both in English and the Greek can show extent, like a great extent. And we often think in English, God so loved the world is saying God loved the world so much. In this sentence, it's more of the manner in which God loved the world. God so loved the world that, this is a manner, that he gave his only son. This is the manner in which God loved the world. Okay? He gave his only son. Something you would see when you're structuring text, many different relationships can explain a particular statement. This could be manner, and this could also be the result. It could also be seen that God's love directly led to him giving his son up. That would be correct too. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you're looking at what the author was doing, and sometimes two things could explain that. So, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, so that says purpose. So while we might have called this manner, and I'm not going to call it, you can write it down manner, because I have to move my keyboard and type it out, and that would slow me down. Okay. So that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Okay, even if you didn't structure it anymore, you see that this is a manner. This is the main clause right here, and this introduces reason. Reason for something that Jesus was saying, and we're not going to get into that. For something Jesus was saying to Nicodemus. Okay, and this is a purpose. The purpose of Jesus giving the purpose of God loving the world in this manner. God so loved the world. God loved the world in this manner. And the manner, in what manner? The manner is that he gave his only son. So that is the purpose of God's loving the world in that manner. So that everyone who believes, okay, you could go granular here and say everyone who believes in him. You could do that. I wouldn't, but you could do that. Everyone who believes in him, everyone who believes will not perish, but have everlasting life. Okay, so and we could even go further, okay, and say will not perish, but have everlasting life, would go like so. Because in this section, will not perish but have everlasting life, the main part is this. This is support. I'll put an arrow here like this. This is supporting supporting the eternal. When in a negative positive situation, the positive is usually the main idea that is being communicated. So that's one way one might structure that part. Okay, this is so important to learn how to structure, and we're using the major structural relationships that we've taught in this course to structure the text. And you can use other descriptions. It's up to you, but using major structural relationships as the core is really important. And if in the course, I'll give you some more labels that you can use to be able to label these relationships. Okay. Now let's look at one more, and then we'll call it for this lesson. So this is from Romans 1:15 to 17. And this is obviously Paul writing this letter to Romans and speaking of himself here. So for my part, I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. This so here is a so that is a therefore so. This is therefore. So there's an inference there for my part. So I'm going to do that so for my part, because the inference, when you have the inference, then what follows becomes what precedes it. The premise is not the main point. The premise introduces the main point. So the main point here so far is I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. Why are you eager to preach the gospel to those who are in Rome, Paul? Because or for, this for here is a because for. Because I am not ashamed. Because that's the reason we're going to put it under. Because I am not ashamed of the gospel. Why are you not ashamed of the gospel, Paul? For it is the power of God. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. For it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. Okay. I'm not gonna break that anymore, but you could. Now, then then one is gonna ask oneself, okay, then Paul has another for here. For, so I'm gonna start over again to make sure I get my train of thought correct. Since I'm doing this I'm doing this. So Paul says here, so for my part, I am eager. This is the main point that he's making here. I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. Okay? Because I am not ashamed of the gospel. Why are you not ashamed of the gospel? Because the gospel is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Why is that so? Because in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. As it is written here, this is a quotation and a comparison. Okay, as it is written, the righteous one will live by faith, but the righteous one will live by faith. Okay, so this is how I would structure this passage to just get the main idea and the supporting details. And so one would then say here, okay, what are the premises that are above? And then Paul says, I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. The reason, then I'll say here, this will be reason for above, reason for wanting to preach the gospel. And then another reason now for, it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and to the Greek. Okay, very good. And good. Structuring the passage like this allows you to be able to see the flow of thought of the author, and it allows you to be able to also, if you're doing an outline of the passage, be able to do it. I hope this helps you on your journey to learning how to structure the text well. If you have any questions, let me know.